Hey guys, Chaps here, and it's time for the weekly developer stream recap. This week was all about character skin design. There's a lot of interesting tidbits that I grabbed, so this is kind of a long recap, but it's worth it. In the interest of time, I'm basically going to hold all of my thoughts to the end. And also, just to be clear and upfront for all of you, no, there's not really any discussion around PvE, PvP, tuning, or any of that. This week was purely skin related. So, let's check it out.
As Dana said, I'm Aryan Hanbeck. I'm a studio art director here at the Coalition, and basically, in a nutshell, all the art that comes out of the studio, I just look after and make sure it's at the highest quality, and I work with art directors and artists on the team, and more specifically with what we're talking about today, I work with Josh to help art direct the skins that we produce and make sure that we're kind of producing the best stuff that we can.
So I'm new to the studio, but not new to the industry. Actually been in the industry for about 15, 16 years.
And you are a big Gears fan.
I actually am. Yeah, that was something that was really important to me when I started to look around and, looking for a life change. It was really important to me to find a job that was a good fit. And, I'm a big gamer, so what I work on is actually really important to me. And as a long-time fan of Gears, I could really picture myself, being part of that team and working on that studio. Was really excited about that opportunity. So that was what led me here. It's the opportunity to work on such a great franchise.
How long does it usually take, and sort of how does the process begin?
Sure. The process usually begins with a seed idea for the character. And one of the things that's kind of interesting is that those ideas can come from anywhere here. We have a bit of a system set up where really anyone on the team can just go in and propose an idea for a skin. You can put up some reference pictures or whatever. Majority of the ideas come from the design team, who in one way or another are involved with sort of when our skins get released, or what maps we might have coming up that we want to bundle the skins with or group them with or whatever. We have a whole narrative team that basically vets all the ideas. For example, we don't want to use a character and put them in an armor that is from a different time period in the lore or something like that, and really throw that out there and have our fans, who of course know all this stuff, really just go, what the hell are these guys doing? So there's a whole narrative side we have to make sure works. There's also some just sort of really nuts and bolts kind of things, like if we're putting out a skin of a character that we have to record new guts for or new lines, and maybe the voice actor is just not available in the time frame. So we might want to do this skin, but we just don't have access to that person, or we don't have the lines we want. So it's a combination of administrative and sort of narrative and a bunch of other reasons that whether some skins will get, pass from the idea phase into the, hey, let's do this, versus just stay in the idea phase. And let's switch over to this this deck here that I have, and this is basically a style guide that I want to show you guys. And it's labeled heroic, and this is what Josh and I will put together. It really serves two purposes. One is, at the end of the day, we send it to the artist and go, here's what you're making. But for me, anyway, the way I approach art direction, the creation of this art style guide deck also helps my own mind get organized about what I want to do. Sorry, Dana, I just wanted to say that's an interesting point that we could talk about for a second that Josh just brought up, is that the style of the characters, as not only over the years has the quality of the art gotten better, but there's little stylistic changes, the size of their boots and how thick their necks are versus so especially when we want to bring a legacy character back, we have to put it up against our current lineup and go, does this still work? And sometimes we end up having to rebuild that character from scratch just to get it to not stick out from a quality or stylistic perspective. So here's the deck. First thing I always do, obviously, give the artists working on this a link to the design brief so they can go check it out themselves. And so Josh and I started doing a bit of brainstorming, and the first thing we thought of is what colors have we not used a lot of? And white is definitely that. Like, we've had a few skins that are white now and again, but you don't often see white skins out on the battlefield. And on top of that, well, we just don't want to do a white skin. That would just be a little bit boring. And this really needs to be taken one level up. And I started thinking about white and gold. Like white and gold has been used for, as you can see, centuries, right? As a sign of sort of opulence and status. And then to put another layer on top of that, white, gold, and red, again, works really well, and white, gold, and blue works really well. So that really fits nicely into our sort of, our two sides and being able to recognize what side the player's on. Traditionally, how do soldiers or generals or whatever, how do they have designate status? It's usually with insignia, with these little signet gold things that you see around their chest, little ribbons. We almost toyed with the idea of having a gladiator sword, our version of that, of course, that would hang on their belt, because that wooden sword was what was handed to gladiators when they had achieved the highest level and they were going to get freed from the fighting. So that was something they held really sacred. So again, just trying to find different ways to elevate it. And then some other things we were kind of talking about. How do we take this sort of to the next level? What are some things that we've never actually seen before on character skins? So potentially adding effects onto the character. This is a bit of a sticky area because, we have some other game modes where the characters have effects on them with their abilities and stuff. So didn't really want to trample on that, but it was just something we were thinking about. And finally, animated skins that our fans are used to seeing on our weapons. We've actually never put one on a character before. And it's possible. There's some issues that we have to work through and limitations. But this is something that we've kept in our back pocket for a long time. And there's a bit of a debate whether we wanted to sort of unleash it on the heroic skins or not. A lot of the work we do is quite technical, like very technical. And a lot of the artists who are in the building are very art focused. They don't quite have that technical side. So what our technical team does is, in a nutshell, acts as a bridge between all the programmers on the team and the artists on the team. And they basically figure out all the pipelines and workflows, and without them, none of this would be possible. They make the good ones make it easy for us to do our jobs and not worry about all the nuts and bolts behind the scenes. And then, of course, they make everything run at 60, which is no easy feat.
Yeah, cool.
I've got a whole bunch of images that Josh and I collected. And these images will give you a little taste of maybe the first one that comes back to us. And then the last one, of course, is an image of where we ended up. So you'll get a bit of an idea of this journey we went on. And the reason we use this model to paint on top of is because it's just fully armored and no one's going to get, sort of distracted by the head or anything. We can just kind of focus on the colors and where they go. So this is all considered basically concept art. Some of it is 3D and some of it is just painted on in Photoshop. So, and then I'll just flip through these and you'll see some slow progress. So there's a few different versions here. Not, no big deal. Red pants, no red. And there's another variant of this guy. You can see here we're starting to get, we'd given the feedback that the chest is all gold. Like we don't want it all to be gold. Let's have some breakup in there. And you can see here that the chest definitely takes a step forward. You start seeing some of that cool filigree and stuff. And then it's like, well, pull back on the red. So now we're just seeing a red stripe, but we're starting to look a little bit like Fast and Furious hood of a car with that red stripe. So again, every time we make a step forward, we also take 2 steps back somewhere else. So as long as we're ambling along upward, generally we're happy. And I'll just go through, these are all, and then, so, here's another evolution. You can see, again, mostly white. That's okay. We're kind of working our way up. But I think we're starting to get to a point here where we're like, the goal of this concept was just to figure out how much gold, how much white, and how much blue there should be. Don't worry about the details. Don't worry about the little, filigree stuff. Let's just figure out which parts should be gold, which parts should be white, which parts should be blue. break it down to really like, it's paint by number, right? It's like, and this is kind of the fun part because the artist can really quickly switch the colors and materials between the different areas and until we get to the right ratio. And you can see we're starting to get a little bit closer. It's like, oh wait, the whole top should be gold. Wait, that feels kind of weird. Go back and forth. I'll just flip through more of these, a little more blue in the middle. And each one that goes forward, here's an example of, the gold looks a little tarnished here, and then here it's really shiny. Do we want, and then this causes a big discussion. Like, do we want the gold to look super shiny? It's like, well, of course, this is supposed to be your trophy on the battlefield. And then Josh reminded me that that's actually not the right look because nothing in Gears looks super shiny. Everything is worn down. Everything has scratches on it. So, and then this one's an interesting thing. We sort of learned the hard way a long time ago that as you design characters, you have to look at them from the back and the right shoulder mostly, because that's generally the view that you're going to see. So we usually do a close-up of the back angle, just so we want to make sure that all the, you don't see especially if you have the skin equipped, you're not going to see it from the front that often, right? Your gameplay camera pretty much is going to show the back. And I'll just continue forward. You can see things are starting to get a little bit better balanced. Some of the straps are going gray just because it was like, well, there's a lot of white. And we're getting closer and closer. We're starting to get a little bit of, the straps are still white, but they have little silver linings around them. Just again, the depth of material difference and variety is really going up. But I just wanted to show this is, like, Josh and I scribble a lot on top of images, and so artists get this. They get to know our handwriting really well, and we start to sort of, just get little paint overs and stuff. But yeah, let's get over there. So here's Marcus. I'm sorry, he's got a little facial recognition box on his head for some reason. AC/DC's putting that on there, so apologies for that. But I'll zoom in a little bit so you can sort of see where we ended up. So of course, Marcus is a characteristic do-rag, in white with a nice gold trim. We've kept a lot of the little filigree on the thing without going overboard. It still feels heavy, but it's ceremonial. You've got the little gold bangle here. And then the blue has been added in the form of crystals. So that's where Josh was referring to earlier. You're going to see a little shimmer effect, which looks really cool to mimic the reflection. As we move down, one of the ways we dealt with all the white was adding a little bit of texture to the cloth underneath and then putting this little gold fishnet lining on there, which looks really cool. And you can see it mimics his outfit also has his regular skin has different material on the inside than the outside. The knee pads have the jewel as well. And in this shot, you're also seeing this interpretation brought over to the Lancer as well. Of course, this is the Gears 5 Lancer, so it's not on the Marcus Lancer, but that's, I'm definitely aware of that. But and you can see here that the crystals on the Lancer are green, and so it's a little bit of a nod to the Venom from Escape. But I'll zoom out again. We definitely talked to some community. We definitely talked to, other, people in the studio to get a gauge. One of the reactions that we had to the white skin was that it didn't fit sort of the Gears look. It was a little, it would look too un-Gears in the battlefield. And this Black's version was in sort of response to that feedback. We went, okay, let's just explore a dark one like this, and it definitely looks really cool. Like, I think Marcus looks badass. But there are two issues we have here. One is it looks a lot like some skins we've already put out. It's not unique enough. And again, when we look at the brief calls for a very unique skin. And the second one is that, to me, it's not going to pop on the battlefield, not just from a unique perspective, just from a overall sort of color scheme. So, we're always sort of walking a fine line with Gears in campaign, with the franchise, with the skins. There's so much lore and history to Gears that people have this sort of expectation of what it should be. And we, of course, want to deliver on that. But if we only deliver on that, you're never going to get anything new.
Question I have that I saw in the chat was, what about something like the New Day skins? How do those ones happen? Because now you're going and you've got something that is obviously not very Gears, has this established sort of like brand in the world, and we do some of these sort of crossover kind of vibes. I look at the Ape skins or the Halo skins or the Sarah Connor skins. Like a lot of these promotional skins, you have to sort of blend a known identity with a Gears identity. Like I would imagine that's really hard, because then you don't have an open sandbox. You have a very defined this is what New Day looks like, and you have to kind of make it work. How hard is that?
It's super tricky. If we use the Terminator stuff as an example, the New Day characters are kind of over the top in they're very similar to Gears. Gears is over the top. Everything that happens in our game is over the top. More explosions, bigger battles, and sort of the New Day is sort of the over the top for even the wrestling world, right? So they really stand out. But when you talk about something like Sarah Connor. Sarah Connor's, a real person. She doesn't walk around with armor on, right? She doesn't, and so when you put a character in our game that has realistic proportions, they tend to stand out against everyone else, not in a good way. So, so what we do is we go, okay, this is Sarah Connor, but this is Gears Sarah Connor. Now, that part's easy. We're pretty good at doing that. The part that gets tricky is when we send that back to, the film studio and Sarah Connor's agent and all that, and they go, well, this doesn't really look like my client. Like, this isn't Sarah Connor. This is like a weird version of Sarah Connor. So that's all part of the process. We basically have to find changes that make that real life person fit into our game stylistically, but also explain to them that, hey, look, this is a stylized game. We're making a stylized version of your character, but we still want you to be happy. It's super important for us. Like, that's no good if we put Sarah Connor in the game and she hates the way it looks, right? So, and sometimes, with the New Day, those guys are, they're huge fans of Gears. So they know, they're just, we're fans of theirs. There's a bunch of wrestling fans in the building, and they love Gears. So they want to see the stylized version of themselves in the game. They're just happy that we're able to put them in, and they think it's awesome. So just depends on who the talent is or who the source of the that we're trying to recreate is. And each one comes with its own challenges. But I really find that part of it really fun, because it's all about sort of setting the stage and educating people about the style of our game, like maybe, and I'm just using Sarah Connor as an example, but Sarah Connor's not home playing Gears of War every night, so she might need to see some images, and we need to help her along to make sure she understands, what our game looks like and what she's gonna look like in our game.
What character would you want to add to the game? I'm gonna go with Josh, self-proclaimed huge Gears fan first. Who do you, and keeping in mind you probably have a little power over this, and it may or may not be leaked, I don't know, but who would you like to see in the game?
Top one, for sure. I mean, I'm a fan of the Lambent skin, so probably be some kind of Lambent version variant of one of the existing characters. Maybe someone even completely new. I'm a Cole main, so maybe like a Lambent Cole.
Oh, you want to cross the streams.
Would be a very interesting, completely out of whack thing. This is hypothetical. It'll probably never get into the game, so I could go crazy. But some kind of human crossed Lambent hybrid would be crazy.
Somebody put Lambent Adam in the chat. That feels like if you were to go into a human Lambent, it would have to be him.
Yeah.
That would make more sense. That's where I'd get checked by the experts as far as what makes any kind of sense to be in the game. But that's just me speaking as someone who likes to play as Cole and looking for a hot new Cole skin.
Yeah, I like it. Aryan.
I'm going to answer the question in a bit of a different way. I would love to see, when we did the swarm guys, we had sort of the grenadier, we had the sniper, and the grenadier had sort of big, thicker armor. The inspiration to that character was sort of these bomb defusal guys that are in the army and those big suits they wear with all the plates on them and stuff. And we have a few limitations as far as, how the characters need to bend their arms and how much stuff we can strap on top of them. But what I would really like to do is to take one of the Gear soldiers, or like a Gears red shirt, or even just take one of our heroes and put them in a bomb defusal grenadier heavy armor. And I know that we don't necessarily have right now this idea of classes where you can pick heavy versus, we don't really have that aspect of it. But I kind of feel like our heavy armor through all these years is not that heavy anymore. And I'd like to just turn that dial to 11 and see one of the characters, lumbering down. Again, we're in fantasy land right now. So,
it's okay.
Well,
that's why I love it.
Take this all with a grain of salt, but this big heavy that lumbers down the battlefield, and you really have to lay down fire on that character for a while to take him or her down, So you can see that both me and Josh's sort of fantasy ideas have all sorts of lore and gameplay implications that aren't good, but that's what kind of happens after you've worked on Gears for a while. You start dreaming of things that break the mold a little bit. I do like the idea of like a Hurt Locker JD. It feels like it could work.
So we have our base characters, so JD, Marcus, whomever, and then we go and we have all these variants that happen, and which is sort of what we're talking about right now. This is where kind of this is where you get to kind of have a little bit of fun. And the ones that have been the most well received, I think, this year have been the variants that actually fill in the gaps. I'm thinking like Major Paddock. I'm thinking of Stranded Dizzy. I'm thinking, even though he was seen before, but we kind of did some stuff. What do you guys think about those kind of where you get to kind of take a lore character, but put him, you actually get to represent something that people have imagined but never actually seen?
Yeah, definitely. There's few different approaches there. One is, sort of what you described. The other approach we've taken sometimes is what was this character's life before the cog? What did they do before? Sometimes you see mechanic character or truck driver character or welding character. We try to kind of think of a backstory that whether we have to make it up or maybe it's something that's in some of the books that have been out or whatever that maybe people haven't read or they don't know. So that's sort of the fun part. And like you said, it is about filling gaps in sort of maybe the lore or background. Also that to me is actually coming up with the idea for the heroic skin and executing on it is tricky, but in a way it's easy because it's new. There's no lineup of heroic characters that people are going to look at this one and go, oh man, they really let us down. That was what we had, now we have this. But when we are dealing with characters that already exist, it actually to me is harder. Because, sometimes those things don't land. We might go, okay, what's Mac's background? Oh, Mac was, whatever. And a truck driver or something. And we'll give you truck driver Mac. And people go, and we kind of forget that, yes, that is fitting to what he was before. But is that a good skin? Does it look cool? Is it going to be desirable? So it's a lot more complicated in my mind to do variants in a way. They're easier because the character, the head's designed, all that stuff's done. But you really have to walk that fine line between, digging really deeply in the lore to find the reasoning behind it, and then forgetting that it also has to just be a really cool, badass skin that people want to get.
Josh, the diamond question. Sorry.
All right. So a little bit of context. The first pass at that was put out before I joined the team, and when I, as someone who newly joined the team, I was approached, with the idea of revisiting something that had already been put out. So already a little bit sensitive and a little bit awkward for me as someone stepping into a new role here, right? But I'm a fan. I appreciate the feedback from the community. It was definitely, I was hearing, I go on the threads, I see what people are saying, and yeah, it's hard to disagree, right? Like, there's sometimes we do stuff with the best of intentions, but we just don't get it right, or it doesn't hit the way we intended, right? And we're not adverse to revisiting those decisions and seeing what we can do to improve it. So we did take another look at that, and we put forward some improvements, some adjustments, inspired by actually what we were doing with the heroics, and we were revisiting how jewels look within the heroic armor set and the way they're mapped out and the animations within them and the way they reflect light. And so we did do a pass on the diamond skins with that in mind, and I thought they were looking quite good in the engine. It's something you have to see, animated and up close to appreciate it. I don't think screenshots do adjust it. So I don't know actually if that new variant has made its way into the game yet, or if only screenshots leaked, or if the you'll have to give me some context here if it made it in and people are still not happy with it. Like, all I can say is that we hear you, and we're doing it. We're doing our best. We're not trying to make bad content. We're trying to make people happy. We're also we don't want to be hung up on this is the way it was in the past. We are trying to evolve stuff. The look has been refined. It's a little bit more realistic, higher fidelity. We're playing on next gen consoles, and we're using screen space reflections and stuff like that now. So everything has to be revisited. We can't just do things exactly the way they are in the past. But we hear you, and we're doing our best. That's what I can say.
So Mac was always supposed to be like like a UK, a British sort of descent, like Northern European, that kind of sort of facial structure. And basically the concepts had that when we made Mac. There was something not quite right with Mac, but we didn't know what it was. By the time we figured out what it was a little too late, because the skin was out there. But the main thing was that Mac was looking too Nordic. Mac was looking like a redheaded Viking, and that was problematic with sort of for a bunch of reasons. Mac wasn't supposed to be that. The voice actor was cast to not be that. So a decision was made to go ahead and make an adjustment to Mac's head. Of course, with DLC coming out that's been announced, you kind of get a glimpse as to why, because Mac was also going to be one of the main characters in our DLC. So the decision was made to revisit Mac, change Mac's head, facial features, get him looking right so that he could also perform in the cinematics for the DLC, and the voice would match better. And then that meant that then we would go back and retrofit the multiplayer skin. So that's a little bit of behind the scenes as to why you saw a switch. Now, is that something we ever want to do? Absolutely not. Like, that is one where the art directors sit in a room and go, okay, we dropped the ball here. What went wrong? We will do a postmortem, figure out why this fell through the cracks, or why it got to a point where we had to do this. We never want to release content and have to sort of go back. But ultimately, I think when you guys see the Mac's character performance in DLC and how good it turned out, that's a lot to do with the changes we had to make. So to me, it was a price we had to pay. And of course, at the time, no one really knew like Mac was going to be in DLC. So it just seemed like something that was maybe arbitrary, or people were wondering what the hell's going on. But now it gives us a chance to sort of fill in some of the gaps and let you know what the backstory about that was.
Agonize asks, is it a huge issue bringing in big characters like a Gears 2 Mira or original Karn? Is it a direct, like, do you basically go and do a direct copy of what was in there, or do you take a little bit of creative license?
I think our first stab at it is to get it as faithful to what it was before. We want to make sure, but of course we have to make, people sort of have this memory of what a character was like. And then if you go play Gears 2 again and you look at it, for example, you go, oh, like, okay, we really need to, upgrade some stuff. So, but we do have issues, when the characters are really big with, when they're in cover, how much stuff you see spilling over cover. We've had to make a couple changes like that, haven't we, Josh, this year?
Yeah. I've been involved in quite a few discussions on how we visually align something, stay true to the aesthetic that's been established in other places, cutscenes or comics or what have you. But
yeah, Sirach is a good example of that.
But match up with what's needed on the gameplay side, right? Because there is considerations to be taken there. But we do our best and we make some modifications, but we always try to stay as faithful as we can to the original designs.
Yeah.
And that does it for the recap. I found this to be an interesting and informative stream. There's a few spots that they didn't really hit on, and I'd really like to see them do a follow-up on this. To start with, this was all about arting. I would love to see some of the more actual back-end type of things that go into making a character, or hell, even a weapon skin. I'm talking about things like hitboxes, gore and chunk volumes, rigging, animations, and how they set up guds. This stream really only covered a small aspect of the character design. The other thing I'd really like to see a bit more about is how the seeds and the briefings are made. They mentioned this at the beginning, but I feel that there could be more details shared around this. We're getting a lot of these lore-based skins right now. How do they find the inspiration for these tiny details that we're seeing? And how do they come up with some of the larger concepts for some of the canonical things that aren't grounded in years of legacy games? Anyways, as far as the arting stuff went, I thought this was a great stream. What did you all think? Let me know down in the comments below. And while you're down there, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I will see you next week.